So what is an Airbnb? So essentially, Airbnb provides a platform for hosts to accommodate guests sorry, I'm psyched. So the guests with short-term lodging and tourism-related activities. That's actually right out of the kind of Airbnb website there. And so essentially, Airbnb is a website, and there are two parts. There is the host part, and then there is the active person who, or guest, or person seeking tourism. So they have hosts who are willing to open up their homes or part of their homes for a short-term lodging, and which is typically defined as less than 30 days. And although typically it's one night to a week, maybe 2 weeks, and also with that offers some kind of tourism activity. I have found there are Airbnbs all over the place, and we're going to talk about some of that too. It isn't just the idea that it is in a destination that may be a tourism type destination. And some of the activities are not just tourism activities, and probably we should be aware of that. We're going to talk about that. Airbnb is part of what we call the 21st century sharing economy. So that's the same as your Ubers and any of the other concepts that we have of being able to share facilities and cars, rides, many other things. So it's kind of an interesting concept. I put down here the website and link right in there. Trying to link into our website here. We're having lots of technical difficulties today. So, There you go. That goes right into their website, and you can see you can go through the website and see various things. It shows you how to host your home, and then also if you're looking to book a stay on an Airbnb. So I just wanted to link right into that. And
sorry, it's sharing the web browser now.
So let's get back. I'm sorry about this little bit of, there we go. Let me go back up and get our slideshow right back on again.
Okay.
Go. So let's go to the next slide, so one of the questions is how does the company own any of these properties? And they don't. It's unlike a hotel. This is
just keep it.
Unlike a hotel, Airbnb does not own any of the real estate listings, nor does it host events. It acts as a broker, and they receive a from each booking. So, interesting concept of how Airbnb. We've got to move forward. Oh, we're going backwards. Oh, let's go back. I really apologize. We usually are much smoother than this in our webinar. So, so the origin of Airbnb, it was founded in 2008. This is, I find, incredible that something that has become so much part of our vernacular and a way of kind of going places has only really been around for 11 years. So the interesting thing was that it was actually conceived after its founders put a mattress down in their living room. It was 3 recently graduated college students living in an apartment in San Francisco, and they found out that they could afford that. And so they decided that they would essentially put down a mattress and create a bed and breakfast. So Airbnb is a shortened version of its original name, which was actually airbedandbreakfast.com. And of course, there are lots of now people who have imitated this, and there are other Airbnb types of competitors. So FlipKey, Turnkey, HomeAway, VRBO, Homestay, Home to Go is some of them, but it's the same as Hoover. I think Airbnb has created that space or that name in 11 years for this kind of share experience. So what about Airbnb and mortgages? Most of us here, we work for unions, so if you are an appraiser here, you are doing appraisals for credit unions. So let's talk about some of the issues that we have with mortgages and that type of thing. The first thing is that what I found, the FHA does not permit rentals of living units in a home purchase with an FHA mortgage if the rentals are less than 30 days. Sorry, not 90 days, 30 days. So essentially, the Airbnb business is not acceptable under FHA loan rules. However, typically, it's not likely that an Airbnb listing can put a homeowner in breach of their mortgage contract. If you are a homeowner and you're interested in renting out a property for your Airbnb, it's probably a good idea to talk to your lender. And one thing I was trying to say just before I had some of that difficulty is that these Airbnbs are everywhere. They are not just in your typical kind of tourist attractions. They're not just in Washington, D.C. or New York or Chicago. They pop up everywhere. I live in Columbus, Ohio. A lot of Airbnbs there. And they're also not in just your prime sites either. And we'll get to a little bit on that. They are some of them don't have the greatest maybe attractions that they should do, and so as an appraiser, kind of expect to see them in many places. Usually they are in urban areas. Unless it's a particular area that attracts a more rural area that attracts some kind of a mountain area or an area. Of a oceanside property or something like that, but typically they're in urban areas, but they don't always rent for the best use. So anyway, I wanted to get to that. Airbnb generated income. Most lenders don't accept the Airbnb generated income on applications. And also, you have to be careful because some lenders will see that renting out a property, even if it's just for a few days, can cause a lender to classify it as an investment property. There are some lenders, select lenders, that do accept Airbnb-generated income on applications. And actually, recently, Airbnb partnered with Fannie Mae and select lenders to allow this. And it could be that some of our credit unions may have the opportunity to do that on mortgages that they're not selling on the secondary market. So it will be interesting to discuss that with our lenders to see if any of them actually are. So how do you recognize an Airbnb? Because often as an appraiser, you're not going to be given any information that when you walk into a property that it is being rented out on a short-term basis as an Airbnb. I think rarely are you actually provided that information, and usually just find it out by mistake, or be able to see some of the signs that it actually is an Airbnb property. So one of the factors is that the property is supposed to be vacant, but it's actually furnished. I recently reviewed a 2 to 4 family report, and the appraiser had put that one side, it was a duplex, so one side was vacant, And when I looked at the pictures, I noticed that it was furnished, but the beds were unmade. We had clean linen folded on top of it. There was a bicycle sitting in the entryway, and it was in a pub area, Louisville, Kentucky. And I went back to the appraiser, but I don't see a list there. But so could it be that that unit is rented for an Airbnb? And in fact, it was. So you may be able to see it from that. And of course, the location has to meet demand for an Airbnb client. The property or unit is tourist friendly and may meet the demand of multiple person use. So sometimes individual rooms are rented out. Again, they have the bicycle in the entryway. Multiple bicycles. If you're in an oceanfront property, they provide some kind of non-realty items that you're going to enjoy your oceanside, chairs and shades and things like that. The listings available on the Airbnb website. You may be able to kind of do a search and be able to kind of find it from that Airbnb website as a verification. Or you may be just lucky enough to have that information provided by the owner or even the client. So that will let you know. There is the difficult thing with these type properties, these short-term listings, Airbnb and others, is that there is no one-size-fits-all. So when we talk about value influences and praising them, they could be anything. So it could be a whole house that's rented out. It could be an apartment. I could rent an apartment in downtown Columbus and rent it out for an Airbnb. The entire apartment, I could rent one room in that apartment. So it's not just owner-occupied, it's rental properties. And it could be a bedroom or a bed. So means of comparison is extremely difficult. And it could come with nothing, or it could come with many items, furniture, bikes, cooking utensils, linens, things like that. So when you talk about the income that is generated by a short-term rental like this, is it, and I think it will be very difficult in some ways to classify that as rent because you don't know what the other intrinsic values of other things are. The other thing is, we're going to talk about this too, is the legal status of this. And, what is the actual legal status of renting this out? And therefore, is this sustainable in the long term, and can it be a stabilized income? So that is an issue that we have. So I go back to, in a later slide, you'll see this, that it's complicated. It certainly is a very new kind of thing, and probably far beyond me to come up with any major conclusions. So there are other kind of bad sides, I guess, a negative side of the Airbnb that I'm sure they wouldn't like me to necessarily talk about, but Airbnb sometimes constitute an externality to other properties in the area, and there's quite a lot of talk about this, and several major cities have tried to, are talking about in the process of getting some kind of regulation on Airbnbs. And part of that is because of the fear of, and we'll talk about, kind of making, putting pressure on property prices in that area, and therefore taking away affordability of homes in certain markets. But also the potential for some kind of externality on the neighborhood, increased traffic, noise, that type of thing. as I said, I live in Columbus, Ohio, and just as a kind of side, there was a shooting at an Airbnb in Columbus this week, and 4 people were shot. It was not in an area that I would expect there to be an Airbnb. It was in a bit of a dodgy part of town, and it was in fact rented out as a party house. So I would expect that. I think that's quite a lot. That's quite common. And my IT guy is nodding his head at that, like he has experience in that. So maybe that's it. Can we go back to that other part? There we go. So that is a thought. And also, you know, the risk of damage to property. And, of course, Airbnb, if you go to their website, they have a little section on trust, and they do have insurance against damage. They say there is some vetting applicants and that type of thing. But what I found an interesting statistic. I was doing some research for this, and the Attorney General in New York in 2014, a gentleman called Eric Schneiderman investigated Airbnb residences in New York City, and he found that 72% Airbnb listings violated property use and safety laws and were therefore illegal. So I would imagine that that was a combination of things. I'm sure that a major part of it was zoning violations or maybe density issues, licensing issues, I'm sure deferred maintenance and that type of thing. But I think that's a really interesting statistic, and kind of also goes to the fact that this is a unregulated industry, and with that there are some obvious issues and predicaments. So, and then, you know, I go to this one that I question is, and I've seen some statistics either way, that, you know, obviously these Airbnb rentals are in residential properties, and yet is that a residential use or a commercial use? So I don't know. That would be maybe beyond my pay grade. A lot of the research I'm seeing is saying that it's still a residential use, but then if you're putting a residential use to commercial use, which essentially you are by offering out not so much as a rental property, but for a short-term living experience, staying experience, I think that can become different. So that's an interesting concept. So one of the things I did research, and there isn't a whole lot of information on this, but and then, you know, wanted to kind of discuss it, and perhaps that's something that we can just discuss via email, is what is the impact of an Airbnb on value? And there is a major fear in some major cities that are seeing a lot of property increased value or rental increases. Cities like Austin and Denver and Nashville, New York City, Washington, D.C. And there is a real fear that Airbnb could impact the price and affordability of these major urban areas. And so, you know, the question, do short-term rentals increase or even decrease property values in the areas around them? And then the question of an individual property value is impacted by that short-term rental use or series of short-term rental uses. And then, as I said, the question of, you know, if renting a property for less than 30 days in a short-term rental situation, is that residential activity or commercial activity? And again, remember what I said about the mortgages, and would that be counted as investment property. And then there are legal considerations. Is the renting out of a property for that short period of time legal? Is that allowed? You know, you have a bundle of rights when you own a property, or even you have a bundle of rights if you lease a property. And what are the legal considerations there? And you know, what is the highest best use of the property if you're talking as an appraiser? And certainly, it's complicated. There are a lot of considerations when we're looking at something like this. It's not a one-size-fits-all, and the book is not being written on this, and I don't know what the answers are, and hopefully we'll come to them. So I found there was actually a recent paper produced by the Economic Policy Institute, and it kind of gave some interesting thoughts on the Airbnb activity and what it did to surrounding properties and values. And the author kind of, you know, concluded that cities overall needed to start treating Airbnb like any other hotel business and regulate it. And I think there's some validity to that. I think out of everything I've read, it's kind of like the Wild Wild West. It's not, as I said, there's no one-size-fits-all. There's no regulation. There are potentials for abuse and potentials for some dangers. I don't know who is vetting the host properties, the hosts who live in them. And one thing that, you know, we're talking about cities in the United States. The incredible thing about Airbnb and probably its competitors is this is a worldwide phenomena, and probably for Airbnb the biggest growth is internationally. When I looked at their website, and if you are a technology expert, you know, you're going to find a job. You can find a job with Airbnb in China or Hong Kong or Australia or any of these places, and it is a worldwide phenomenon. But I think here in the United States, I think there is some need for some regulation, at least to put some controls on what is there. There was also a conclusion that there is a potential impact on value, essentially because of the repurposing of housing units into long-term housing. And typically, housing units there's turnover, whether it's a rental property or an owner-occupied property. They tend to turn over fairly quickly. And so supply and demand tend to be more matched. Now, in many of these cities, there are issues of supply. There is a fairly short supply in the markets. So when you take those housing units, take them out of the opportunity for sale, you impact the supply even more because you're putting them into long-term use and they're not going to turn over. So that obviously supply and demand will cause rents and prices to rise. So I thought that was a very interesting phenomenon and a thing to look at, that in some of these markets, you're essentially squeezing the supply of housing units by putting them into use as Airbnb. Instead of somebody who has a condominium in Chicago and they get relocated to another city, instead of selling that property, they hold it as an Airbnb. So I thought that was interesting. And you know, I saw this statistic that came out of this working paper out of the University of Massachusetts that found that in Boston there was essentially a causal relationship between the Airbnb proliferation and housing prices. And they basically could see that for every 12 Airbnb listings in a census tract, asking rents actually increased by 0.4%. So I'm not sure that's necessarily cause and effect, but it is an interesting statistic, having said that. So here we are. You're out there. You want to know is how do I appraise an Airbnb, and you know, should it impact the value? Is it going to? And again, I go back to that. It's complicated, but I would look, you know, our three approaches to value, and the first being sales comparison approach. And you know, I think you have to look at, if in a market with high concentrations of Airbnb listings, our sale prices influence, and are people buying properties or not selling them because of the potential for Airbnb list, you know, earnings? Are there limitations on supply because by conversion of properties into this long-time residential units? And then on the other side of that, are there any negative impacts for the potential externalities? And all that should be demonstrated in your market evidence. But I think you have to be aware of it when you are appraising in those areas. I think it is, if you have a concentration of these types of properties, there may be some impact. Again, in the income approach, a market rent's increasing because of Airbnb concentration. In other words, are people prepared to pay a higher rent because then they can use that property for a short-term rental? Again, supply and demand and capitalization and risk. And cost approach, your impact on values and purpose-built units. I don't know if people are intentionally building properties that they could design for Airbnb use or that type of thing. So I think, again, I go back to what is your market evidence. And there is no one-size-fits-all, and I'm afraid I do not have any conclusions for you. I am hopeful that, you know, as this phenomenon grows and we see more evidence that there is something that will help us to guide us. I have a good friend of mine who I see is on this call, Jason Ferris, and he is very prominent appraiser down in Louisville, and he is going to actually, I'm hoping, write us a fantastic class on this thing for the Appraisal Institute. So call out to Jason, and I'm sure he's not going to like that I did that. But I think that this is something that we're going to see more of in the future. So I'm glad that we had this conversation. So, having talked about that, I'd like to just talk a little about appraiser professionalism. We're going to segue right into it. I always hate this part of the, when we get into this, because I just don't want it to be a nag. Hey guys, you got to behave, you got to watch what you say, don't wear shorts to your inspections, and I don't mean it as that. But any of us who kind of work closely with clients, we hear the complaints sometimes, and we hear some of the things said, and I want to make sure, and I can tell you, we partner with the very best appraisers. You guys are absolutely, wonderful, incredible. But very, very rarely we do get a few kind of comments and things. So I just want to run over a couple of things and talk about them. So let's talk, because I love USPAP, concept of public trust as invoked by USPAP. And really, it involves that kind of relationship. And I know each one of you takes a USPAP class. Well, maybe every year, maybe every other year. And you should take next year because USPAP will change. and it will change quite a lot. But idea of that relationship between the appraiser and the public, and it's based on this belief that the appraiser provides a service with independence and objectivity, and that the appraiser's opinions and conclusions will be competently developed, credible, and meaningful to the users of that service. And the question I have is, what does it take to ensure trust? What does it mean that the users of our services trust us? Is it that we provide a spotless appraisal report that is wonderful, or is it that we're polite, or is it everything? That we are professional. We are absolutely the best we can possibly be. And one thing I always hated is that, as an appraiser, coming to this country as an appraiser, when I heard people talk about appraisal shops, made it sound like someone was going to go get their car worked on. You know, we're professional. It takes more now, I think, to be an appraiser than it does to fly our experience, our education, appraise millions of dollars worth of collateral, and have an incredible responsibility, and professionalism is very important. So, you know, let's talk about a couple of things, and one is the appraisal report. Guys, remember, this represents your body of work, and it's going to be communicated to the client. It's going to be communicated, you know, to any intended users, but the borrower is going to read it too. They're going to get it, and I'm sure everybody on this call is wonderful on this. But remember that spelling and grammar matter. There's nothing more frustrating than reading an appraisal report that has typos or grammar mistakes. You know, I put it on the level as reading a legal brief. If I was to read a legal brief, I wouldn't expect to see those, and I'm hopeful that is the same in an appraisal report. The other thing, the presentation matters. One thing that I review a lot of reports, and one thing that bugs me is that, well, first of all, there's no consistency, so everybody puts everything in different places, but I can't control that. That's how it is. But the way I would suggest that you print out a copy of your standard URA appraisal report, and you look at the way it flows. You look at if you've got titles, and if your addendum flows properly, if the actual font is the same size. Something I can't understand why people have different sizes, that things are capitalized properly. If you do things in all caps, realize that you're shouting at me. You're shouting your appraisal report at me. So you'll think about how your appraisal looks. Remember that the exhibits matter. Your maps should be clear, and your photographs should be clear and clearly labeled. Don't try and cram 25 pictures onto one legal page. I can't see anything. So make sure, and don't put your subject photos, and then your comp photos, and then some more subject photos, then your location map, then some more subject photos, and then your license, and then the plat map. That doesn't make sense. Have it flow properly. There is no essential absolute order, but think about how a reader would like to read that report, how it is important to have it consistent. I have a very favorite appraiser. Ooh, I don't see him on here, but he might be. Great appraiser. I have to get to page 40 before I can find his addendum. Now, that's a little annoying. So I know it's there. Now, luckily, I know where it is, but I have to go through absolutely everything before I get to his addendum for him to explain why he made the adjustments in his appraisal report. So think about it. Look again about how your appraisal flows. Don't forget your UAD definition. The borrower reading that report has no idea what a C rating is or a Q rating. Those UAD definitions are really important. If by some strange thing you get a request from the underwriter, I'm really hopeful you don't, but you will. Don't be rude about it. If and believe me, I've seen many of these, if the underwriter had a proper pair of glasses, they could see that the comment regarding the garage is on page 15. Not the way to address it. You know, I have been asked for this, you know, so many times or whatever it is. Remember, this is your body of work on this assignment. This appraisal could end up at the state. You never know. So make sure that you're at least polite. If, you know, if this address, say, you know, underwriting request, please see page 15 for commentary. And then maybe expand on it a little more to explain it. You're probably going to get an appeal. Especially now, we are getting a lot of appeals, and I have to think that homeowners are a couple of things. I'm sure that they're to refinance, and they're thinking they had a little more equity in their home than they did. Sometimes, you know, we've gone into a bidding situation on a purchase. It's pushed up that purchase price beyond the value. So we're seeing a lot of appeals. Do not get defensive on the appeal. In every single profession, there is an appeal. In the legal profession, there's an appeal. If you're a doctor, you're expecting, you know, sometimes your patient to go for a second opinion. There is nothing wrong with an appeal. You just have to deal with it as a professional. Write a rebuttal in the addendum. Never be afraid to realize that you might have been wrong. You know, we're appraisers. We can be wrong. Maybe we missed a sale. Maybe there's a different way of looking at it. It could be you measured it wrong. I don't know. I hope not. But don't be defensive. Just deal with it as a professional. Realize that it's not a criticism of you. And this person is not, you are the most educated person in the room, and sometimes it can be an opportunity for you to educate them. Or maybe you realize that you just didn't explain it clearly enough in the appraisal report. You know, why you chose a particular sale, or why the sale that they have presented is not comparable. Don't just put houses 200 square feet smaller sold 8 months ago. Well, hang on a sec. You got a stable market. Maybe it'll be a problem with that house being 8 months old, you know, selling 8 months ago. You know, just be, you know, this sale was considered after, you know, whatever it is, that it wasn't comparable, but be very clear and state why and polite. Because, again, that rebuttal that is in your appraisal report becomes part of the body of work, is part of your appraisal. So you need to act with professionalism, and again, public trust. You are the expert in the room. You need to demonstrate that always. So out in the field, again, you are you're a professional. And unlike many other professionals, you have to go face-to-face with people. You're going face-to-face often with people who aren't your client, but certainly have communications with your client. You're going face-to-face with borrowers and realtors. And I always think that is an irony, that the poor appraiser is out in the field, but he's never actually talking to a client. And I'm sorry about that. That's part of we have at this minute, you know, and so with that, couple of things. I know that you put a lot of miles on your cars, and I've been out in the field a long time, and I hear of appraisers use their old appraisal car. That's fine. Just try to make sure it's clean. And one thing we got this week, we got an unfortunate complaint from a borrower because of a bumper sticker on his car. So try to be mindful that not everybody shares the same opinion about this as you do, and that might be offensive to someone, and may not be a good idea to have certain bumper stickers on your car. Also, you guys, you're going out there to take comp pictures. I see a lot of people who have, they now have the magnets on their side of their car that say appraiser. It's probably a good idea. You should always have your available. I would say your little bucket thing of your license with your appraisal license to show who you are. I think you should probably show that to a borrower when you go into a house to show who you are, and that they know who you are. One thing, show that you know how to measure. One of the commonest, probably one of the, in an appeal, one of the things that we get the biggest on is the square foot. Oh, the square foot's wrong. It's 300 square feet bigger than the appraiser said. And, you know, the county has it at this or that. So really take time when you measure your property and kind of show whoever's there that you know how to measure. That's one of the things appraisers do well. And so show how that you do. Be very, I don't know, I said this 100 times, I think, to appraisers, maybe thousands of times. Be very careful in your conversations with borrowers and realtors. Be professional, and that doesn't mean that you're going to be rude and not talk to them. But on the other side, be careful. Don't discuss, certainly don't discuss your own personal issues or anything with them. But, you know, certainly don't make, I don't know, don't give opinions about their house or their, just be mindful of your professionalism in your conversations. And, you know, we've had people who have gone in, you know, if you're sick, don't go to an appointment. Do not be coughing all over somebody or whatever it is. Far better that you let us know that you're unwell than you go to an appointment coughing all over everyone or you're on death door, because that'll get back to us while they're really sick. I don't know how they did that appraisal, because they said they were really sick, and they have all these health problems, and you know, I don't have confidence in this, you know. So be very careful. Don't discuss your health issues with the borrower, personal issues, that kind of thing. Make sure you're prepared and that you have your data. If someone wants to provide you with information, fine. You can take it. You don't have to use it. Be polite. We all know the realtors are going to give us, you know, comes from 20 miles away that sold 5 years ago, and let them. You don't have to use it. Don't kind of say, how on earth did you manage to come up with this list price, or whatever. Don't ask them to take photographs for you, the other thing that we've had issues with. And dress for success. That sounds really good, doesn't it? Doesn't mean that you have to dress in a suit, tie, but make sure you look professional, and that you're not going in your workout clothes. You're not going in a pair of shorts and flip-flops, that you are dressed, you know, business casual, or however you want to be, that you're comfortable, but you're not you're professional. So you are representing the client. So it's not cocktail hour quite yet. Give these quote. I think it's kind of a funny quote. Always do sober what you said you'd do. That will teach you to keep your mouth shut. We have had many instances, not many instances, it's happened a few times, where an appraiser has a couple of drinks in the evening and decides that they're going to call a realtor they didn't get on with, call us for some reason, leave a message, generally harass people or whatever. Keep away when you've had your couple of glasses of wine at night or anything that's stronger. Keep away from your email, keep away from your appraisal report, and keep off the phone, with us anyhow. Because it is pretty funny when we hear it, but it's going to get you removed from the panel. We don't want that, and we have no problem with anybody having cocktail hour, but not at the expense of your professionalism. So I thought that was kind of a thing I should put in there just because it has happened. So having said that on professionalism, I've kind of done my nag for the afternoon, and about 5 more minutes. So I wanted to give you a little bit of information. There is always information out there. Many of you, I'm seeing a list of names of people on this call, and you work from home, most of you, and some of you are with firms, but you know, we don't get to talk to appraisers all that often. We're always, you know, wanting information. So I kind of put a few things in here. I found out this week, it's probably been there a little while, so it's pretty sad that I found out this week, that now Fannie Mae has an appraiser page. It is absolutely wonderful. Could you hit it in and we could take a quick look at it? Let's see if we get it on the screen for you guys. I put it on our engagement letter too, so you can hit it. It is kind of, we'll try and get it for you. Well, we can't do this. But anyhow, there's information on there. First of all, it'll put a link through to, here we go, there it is. Yeah. So it'll put a link. We think it's there we go. So it puts a link through to actually to the appraiser, to Fannie Mae's guidelines. It has links to kind of events, and usually those events are where Fannie Mae is participating. Obviously, the Appraisal Institute just finished their conference, but we have the Appraisal Summit Valuation Expo. Has some things that are really interesting. I think this, I want to watch this video on appraising properties with solar panels. We've had a few, we have a credit union in Texas that is offering loans to people putting in some efficiency, energy efficient items. So I think this will be really interesting. And I've had to have some conversations with appraisers on that. Some manufactured housing training there, resources, Q&As. So I think it's a really good, there's some career facts there. So it is really nice little kind of page with some interesting things for appraisers. So I would suggest you go to it. Of course, the selling guide is going to help you on your guidelines. You should all be aware of that. The link is on our engagement letter, so you should be able to get to that. So very cool, very nice to have. Okay, the next thing that I put on there, I think, was the Appraisal Foundation. And the Appraisal Foundation is another wonderful source. And if any of you ever get the opportunity to go to a meeting either of the Appraiser Qualifications Board, the Appraisal Standards Board, you should go. But get on the website, look. There are lots of things to look at there. You can read the latest draft on the changes to USPAP. And if you're part of an appraiser coalition, you get a speaker, a member of AQB, ASB, John Brannon, and to come to the site, to a meeting. I actually went back and forth on an email yesterday with John Brannon, who is in charge of, he basically is the one who puts together the Q&As for USPAP, and he literally responded within an hour to me on a question I had. So if you have any questions, you don't know if what you're doing is the right thing, or you've got somebody who's asking for something you don't feel is right, go on here, send a question to them. It could become one of the questions on the Q&A. Very interesting. If you have anybody that's interested in becoming an appraiser, they have great resources for people who want to be an appraiser. They have a major push right now veterans training to be appraisers. They're really interesting things on the Appraisal Foundation. They've worked extremely hard on this, I can tell you. Here at True Union, we actually belong to the Industry Advisory Council for the Appraisal Foundation. So we know the good work that they're doing. It is absolutely fantastic. So I think go and see what they're talking about. Good resource. The final thing is your state coalitions. Many of you are in states that have really good coalitions. So I would encourage any of you to become part of your local state coalition if you have them. They are a great resource. If you go down, Ian, you'll see a map. Yeah. And so if you hit Ohio, it'll take you to the Ohio Coalition. And so you can hit the state, it'll take you straight. So this is OCAP, which is Ohio's coalition. And Ohio, we have a day-long seminar each year. We have chapters in the major cities. So you can attend a chapter meeting once a month, talk to other appraisers, learn from other appraisers, and there are many other really good coalitions out there. Illinois has a really good chapter. I think I know that Virginia does, and so become involved, and also they're very strong lobbyists. Ohio, OCAP was a very strong lobbyist in our appraisal management registration law, and had some things put in there that they wanted to see, and very positive things that they work very closely with our state appraiser board to make sure that we had a really good AMC registration bill that was passed. So I think become involved, talk to other appraisers. It will help you as an appraiser. I have now talked for about an hour, so I want to hang up. You should, the last thing, I'll just put my email address should be up there, and it is scarothers@trueunion.net. It should be on the last slide there somewhere. Right to that last slide. Yeah, hit it right there. And questions? Well, maybe it's not. Yep. Maybe it's not. Forgot it. Okay. Sorry, another technical difficulty. scarothers@trueunion.net. And any questions, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Love to hear your thoughts on the Airbnb. And more to come on that later. Thank you very much for attending.